Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. I was scraping Tiffany's name off the brass plate on my garage office when her message arrived. The letters had clung to the metal for years, dulled and stubborn, like they knew I wanted them gone, but wouldn't give me the satisfaction easily. I pressed the screwdriver under the final Y, lifted it off, and flicked it into the trash can. That sound should have been closure. Instead, my phone buzzed in my back pocket. The subject line read, "Are you safe?" No sender name, no greeting. Just those 3 words. But I knew exactly who sent them. After 15 years of silence, Tiffany had decided to reach out. I didn't open the email right away. I held the phone like it was a live wire, then set it on the workbench. 15 years. That's how long it had been since she walked out for Martin, the married man she swore she wasn't seeing. That affair had turned my life inside out, left me staring at receipts and motel key cards while neighbors whispered behind their curtains. And now, after all that time, she wanted to know if I was safe? I didn't delete the email. I didn't reply either. I printed it, slid a tag through the corner, and pinned it to the corkboard above my bench. A piece of evidence, not a lifeline. Something to remind me that Tiffany Lane had once chosen another man's bed over her own home. The next morning, another email came through. This one was blunt. Kite Street Cafe. Saturday, noon. If you don't come, I'll understand. But I'll be there. I still didn't respond. I didn't need to. She already knew I'd show up. It wasn't a storm that carried her out of my life. No shouting, no broken glass. Just a Thursday evening that smelled like roast chicken and thyme. I'd taken it out of the oven and set the table for 2. At 7:15, Tiffany pulled into the driveway. I heard the car door slam, quick, deliberate. When she stepped inside, I knew, not from her words, she hadn't said any yet, but from the scent. Hotel soap and unfamiliar cologne clung to her dress. She didn't hang up her coat or kiss me hello. She went straight to the bedroom closet, pulled a suitcase down, and started filling it with clothes. "What are you doing?" I asked. Her hands moved fast, but her voice came out flat. "I can't lie anymore, Andrew. I'm with Martin." The name hit harder than the words themselves. Martin Caldwell. Our neighbor 3 houses down, a real estate agent with a wife and 2 young kids. A man who'd stood in my kitchen, drinking my beer, talking about weekend barbecues. Martin? He's married. I know. She didn't stop folding shirts. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She paused then, just long enough to look at me. Her eyes weren't angry or even guilty. They were done. "I'm leaving tonight." I tried one more question, though I already knew the answer. "Why him?" Tiffany zipped the suitcase, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "Because he makes me feel alive. I haven't felt that in years." That was it. She rolled the suitcase down the hall and ordered a rideshare from her phone. I followed her to the door but didn't block her path. She pulled the handle, stepped out, and never looked back. When the car drove away, I stood in the doorway. The table set for 2 looked ridiculous. Later that night, after the house had gone quiet, I found a toll receipt crumpled on the counter. The city printed on the slip was 2 hours away, proof of where she'd been. I slid both items into a drawer in my desk and locked it. I told myself I wouldn't look again, but I did. 15 years passed before I saw Tiffany again. I meet her at a corner cafe where the booths gave enough privacy for people who didn't want to be seen. She was already there when I walked in, sitting by the window with a cup she hadn't touched. Her hair was shorter now, streaked with gray at the edges. She wore a plain sweater, nothing like the bright dresses she used to favor. When she saw me, she didn't smile. She just nodded, as if this were a business meeting. "Andrew," she said softly. "Tiffany." I kept my tone flat, sat down across from her. I expected an apology, maybe even excuses, but she didn't offer either. She leaned forward, clasped her hands, and said, "You deserve the truth. There's something you don't know." I raised an eyebrow. "After 15 years, you want to talk about truth?" She didn't flinch. She reached into her purse and slid a photograph across the table. A teenage girl stared back at me, about 13 or 14, with sharp eyes and dark hair that reminded me of my own. "Her name is Sophie," Tiffany said. "She's ours." I stared at the picture, then at her. We never had children. I didn't know I was pregnant when I left. By the time I found out, it was too late to come back. I told myself I'd handle it, that she didn't need you. The cafe seemed louder all of a sudden, but I couldn't move. My hand tightened on the edge of the table. "You let me think you were gone for good," I said. You let me bury us, while you raised my daughter with another man's shadow hanging over you. Tiffany's voice dropped. I'm not just here because of Sophie. I'm sick, Andrew. Heart failure. The doctors say it's getting worse. She needs you now, whether you hate me or not. The photo sat between us like a loaded gun. I didn't touch it. 2 days later, I met Sophie for the first time. Tiffany arranged it at a community robotics workshop, a place full of soldering irons, scattered wires, and half-built drones. The room buzzed with the sound of kids tinkering, but my focus locked on the girl in the corner with her hair tied back, hunched over a small quadcopter. Tiffany waved me over. Sophie, this is Andrew. He's an old friend. The word friend stung, but I let it pass. Sophie glanced up, her eyes sharp, measuring me in seconds. Then she looked back at her drone. Hi, I offered. She muttered something that barely passed as a greeting and went back to adjusting the wiring. The drone's light blinked, then went dark. Connection's loose, I said. She sighed, pushed it toward me. Think you can fix it? Her tone wasn't curious. It was a challenge. I took the soldering iron, pressed the joint, and reconnected the wire. The light blinked steady. I slid it back. Sophie lifted the controller, thumbed the sticks, and the drone lifted clean off the table. She raised an eyebrow, not impressed exactly, but less guarded. You know this stuff? She asked. Enough to keep things running. She let the drone hover for a moment, then landed it. So, are you staying, or are you like everyone else? The question cut sharper than anything Tiffany had said. I glanced at Tiffany across the room. She was pretending to read a pamphlet, leaving me on my own. I looked back at Sophie. I'm here now, and I don't plan on walking away. She studied me, trying to decide if I meant it. I saw something in her face that wasn't suspicion, not trust yet, but something close to curiosity. Before she could respond, Tiffany stepped over. We should get going, she said quickly, like she didn't want the conversation to stretch any further. Sophie packed up her drone without a word. As we walked out, she stayed a step ahead of us, not looking back. But I noticed she hadn't pushed me away either. It was after Tiffany's cardiology appointment that Martin showed up. I was walking her back to the car when I heard his voice from across the parking lot. Andrew? He looked older, heavier around the middle, but his eyes still had the smug shine I remembered. He walked over, hands in his coat pockets like he owned the place. I heard you've been meeting Sophie, he said. I kept my tone level. She deserves to know who her father is. Martin smirked. Father? I've been raising her for 13 years. You think you can walk in and claim something I built? Tiffany shifted uncomfortably but didn't speak. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so it stayed between us. You built nothing. You stole a marriage and lied to a child. That ends now. Don't kid yourself. Keeping Sophie wasn't about you or her. Tiffany had property in her name. Investments, accounts. As long as Sophie stayed under my roof, I had a hold on both of them. That's how the world works, Andrew. Money and leverage. You were out. I was in. I stared at him, realizing Sophie was never more than a bargaining chip to him. He stiffened, but I didn't give him a chance to answer. I opened the passenger door for Tiffany. Get in. On the drive back, Tiffany stared out the window. You shouldn't provoke him. Martin doesn't back down easily. I'm not interested in his temper, I said. I'm interested in proof. She looked down at her hands, twisting the edge of her sleeve. You think I won something with him? He treated me like property. Controlling. Suspicious. Every day was a fight over nothing. I left you for a disaster, Andrew. That's the truth. Her words hung in the air, bitter and flat. The next morning I ordered a DNA test. Quietly, without telling Tiffany. At the same time, I reached out to Leah Chen, an attorney I trusted, to prepare guardianship paperwork. If Tiffany's condition worsened, I wanted Sophie out of Martin's reach. That evening Tiffany called me. Her voice was strained. You're angry, and I get that. But you have to understand, I didn't tell you about Sophie because I was afraid. Afraid you'd look at me and see nothing but my affair. Afraid Martin would use it against me. I kept control the only way I knew how. I didn't argue. You don't get to decide who Sophie knows. Not anymore. Silence hung on the line before she whispered. Then don't fail her, Andrew. Because if you do, she'll never forgive either of us. I ended the call without replying. My course was already set. The envelope arrived 3 weeks later. I opened it at my workbench, the soldering iron still warm from a repair job. One line in black print erased any doubt. 99.9% probability of paternity. Sophie was mine. That night, I called Tiffany. She deserves to hear the truth from you, I said. Not as some vague story. Not with me in the shadows. You tell her, or I will. Her breath caught. Andrew, she'll hate me. She already doubts you. Lies won't save anything now. The next day, we sat together in Tiffany's living room. Me, Tiffany, and Sophie at the far end of the couch. Tiffany clutched a folded tissue, her hands trembling. There's something I should have told you a long time ago, she began. Andrew isn't just a friend. He's your father. Sophie's head snapped toward me, then back to her. What? Tiffany nodded, eyes watering. I was pregnant when I left him. I thought I could handle it alone. I thought keeping him away was better, but I was wrong. Sophie stood, her face flushed. You lied to me. My whole life, you lied. She turned to me. And you? Where were you? Did you even look? Her words landed like punches. I answered carefully. I didn't know you existed. If I had, nothing would have kept me away. She shook her head, pacing, then stopped cold. I don't know if I can believe either of you. The room went still until she stormed upstairs, the door slamming hard enough to rattle the frames on the wall. When it was quiet again, I said to Tiffany, that was the first honest thing you've given her. Don't take it back. Later that week, Martin tried to push back, demanding meetings, pressing Tiffany to block me. But Leah's paperwork was ready, and with the DNA results, his voice held less weight than he thought. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't the one on defense. Tiffany's decline came fast. One week, she was walking slowly through the park with Sophie. The next, she was in a hospital bed, pale against the sheets. Machines hummed quietly around her, each beep a reminder that time was slipping. I sat on one side, Sophie on the other. Neither of us spoke much. Late one evening, when Sophie had dozed off in the chair, Tiffany turned her head toward me. Her voice was faint. I didn't bring you back into her life to fix what I broke with us. I did it because she needs you. Promise me you won't disappear. I'm not going anywhere, I said. Her lips trembled into something between a smile and a grimace. Good. Then put your name where it can't be erased. For her. The next morning, the doctors told us it was time. Sophie held her mother's hand. I sat opposite, watching Tiffany's breathing grow shallower, each rise and fall weaker than the last. She opened her eyes once more, looked straight at me and whispered, "Show her who you are." Then her chest stilled. No dramatic gasp, no final cry. Just silence. Sophie didn't cry immediately. She sat frozen, gripping Tiffany's hand like she could still anchor her to the world. I didn't try to speak. Words had no use in that room. When the nurses stepped in, I guided Sophie out into the hallway. She leaned against the wall, her face tight, refusing to break. She told you to stay, she muttered finally. I meant what I said, I replied. Sophie nodded once, not trusting herself to say more. But she didn't pull away when I placed a hand on her shoulder. For the first time, I felt the shift. Tiffany's choices no longer defined what came next. It was on me now. The funeral passed like a blur. Condolences from people I barely remembered. Whispers about Martin that I ignored. Sophie standing stiff beside me in a black dress she hated. When it was done, and the crowd faded, we were left with a silence that felt heavier than any sermon. A week later, Sophie came to me with her backpack slung over one shoulder. Can I stay here for a while? She asked, her voice steady but her eyes searching. I didn't hesitate. Yes. The first nights were quiet. She spent most of her time in her room, locked away. I let her be. I knew trust wasn't built in speeches. It was built in presence. On the fourth night, close to midnight, she wandered into the garage while I was tuning an old radio. She leaned against the doorway. You fix these things? Always, I said. She stepped closer, eyeing the guitar case in the corner. Do you play? Not well, but enough. I opened the case, strummed a few chords. The sound was rough, strings out of practice. Sophie pulled up a stool. Teach me that. I showed her the basics, her fingers fumbling over the strings. She cursed under her breath, then tried again. 10 minutes passed before she managed a clean note. She grinned, not wide, not carefree, but genuine. That was how it started. Small lessons, late nights, slow trust. She didn't call me Dad. Not at first. For weeks it was just Andrew. Then one evening after we finished restringing the guitar, she muttered, "Thanks, Dad," so quickly I almost missed it. She didn't repeat it, and I didn't ask her to. The next morning, I installed a new brass plate on the garage door. The engraving was simple. Andrew/Sophie. I stood there a long while, running my hand across the letters. 15 years ago, Tiffany's affair with Martin had stripped everything down to silence and locked drawers. Now, against all odds, the name on the door meant something again. This time, it wasn't going anywhere. Thank you for watching.